This is a beautiful morning. I wanted to share a little faith insight with you regarding God's power and His knowledge and His creation. In Isaiah chapter 40, Isaiah shares this little comparison between God's grandeur and His creative power and humankind's tendency to fashion our own gods. In chapter 40, he says, "Behold, the Lord God will come with strong hand, and His arm shall rule for Him. Behold, His reward is with Him, and His work before Him. He shall feed His flock like a shepherd. He shall gather the lambs with His arm, and carry them in His bosom, and shall gently lead those that are with young." And then he asks these questions. "Who hath measured the waters in the hollow of His hand, and meted out the heavens with the span," or measured the heavens with a measuring rod, "and comprehended the dust of the earth in a measure, and weighed the mountains in scales, and the hills in a balance? Who hath directed the Spirit of the Lord, or being His counselor, hath taught Him? With whom took He counsel, and who instructed Him, and taught Him in the path of judgment, and taught Him knowledge, and showed to Him the way of understanding?" And then this reality check, verse 15. "Behold, the nations are as a drop of a bucket, and are counted as the small dust of the balance. Behold, He taketh up the isles as a very little thing." Isaiah is painting this picture here of the grandeur and the greatness and the goodness and the power of our God, saying, people, look all around you. Who taught God how to do this? From whom did He take counsel? Who was His mentor or His teacher? The irony being, there is none. God holds all these things in His hand, and yet what do human beings inherently do? "The workman melteth a graven image, and the goldsmith spreadeth it over with gold, and casteth silver chains. He that is so impoverished that he hath no oblation chooseth a tree that will not rot, and then he takes that tree and he fashions it into an idol that he can then worship." Isaiah's point here is very clear. We can either choose to create our own idols today, our own gods to worship, or we can look at God's handiwork all around us in this big world and recognize the artist, the creator, the God who brought order and beauty to this world, and recognize that He doesn't just hold this world in His hand, He holds my world and your world in His hand. Therefore, what? What can we actually do with this knowledge or this perspective? Perhaps we could spend more time saying, "Lord, what would Thou have me do? What would Thou have me say? What would Thou have me become?" Rather than turning to the world. We live in a world that would encourage us by saying, "If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of Google," as opposed to what James chapter 1 says, "If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, who giveth to all men liberally." Now, Google isn't evil, and Google can be a powerful instrument in our hands as long as we don't allow it and the wisdom of the world to become our idol or our God that has been fashioned and created by the hands of men, and we ignore God in His grandeur and in His glory. I want to share a little example of this. Many years ago, my wife and I were trying to make some decisions regarding our career and some education, and the question was, should I go on to get a higher degree? And we prayed about it. We studied it out. We asked a whole bunch of people many, many questions. And through that process, I think we decided about 20 or more times not to go on and get that degree for a variety of reasons. But there came a time when that thought just wouldn't leave. That idea, that concept would not leave us alone. And then the realization hit. We needed to do it. We didn't want to. We didn't feel like we had the time or the money or the resources or the energy or the desires to do it, but we felt like there was a reason that God wanted us to do that. And He didn't give us all of the reasons why. He just gave us the instruction to do it. Back to the Isaiah concept. If we look at this world around us and we just trust that if God can create all of this without anybody having to tell Him how to do it or mentor Him on it, then perhaps I can have greater faith and trust in Him and not have to have all of the answers right now at the outset. So we went ahead and got that additional education. And now, more than 20 years later, looking back, we see all of the things that the Lord has brought into our life because of that education that would not have been possible without it. And we are so grateful for God's goodness. C.S. Lewis was the one who said, in the end, there are really only two kinds of people. Those who say to God, "Thy will be done," and those to whom God will say, "Thy will be done." May the Lord bless all of us in our efforts to look at this beautiful world that God has created for us and to recognize that God doesn't just hold this world in His hand. He holds your world in His hand, and He holds you in His heart because you're His beloved child. Know that you're loved.